part 2 of this questions and answers on Roswell. And I would just again thank all of you who were here last night, over at the Convention Center, for what was really a memorable, historic dialogue on this extraordinary subject. I'm going to pass the mic on to my friend and colleague Stanton Friedman, and I'm going to ask each of the speakers to introduce themselves in 2 minutes or less. Then they will have a choice of the wonderful hook or the stuck method. And then we will get into our Q&A. Stanton T. Friedman.
Thank you very much. I must say I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be alive at this stage of my life. But I am so pleased that the improvements in the museum, the popularity of the program, I gather we've set new attendance records. Ufology and Roswell are coming of age, is the way I feel after this. I'm very encouraged by that because you never know how these things are going until you get there and see what happens. And Roswell hasn't lost its luster. I am pleased that so many people have come so far to take part in this extremely interesting event, if nothing else. And so I'm hoping I get to come to more of these conferences. I keep telling people my parents both lived to be 90, so I've got almost 8 years to go, so I'll take them. So thanks for coming. I hope tonight is a fitting ending to the entertainment and the enlightenment of your time here in Roswell. Beautiful downtown Roswell, I call it for people. So thanks for coming.
You're going to be jump roping all evening, so.
Performance by Robbins.
My sentiment's exactly that. We meet so many new people each year, and that you're beyond attending just for the entertainment, the fun. We have no idea what's really going on outside because we're always so restricted to our talks and meeting and answering questions even at our tables for over the last 3 days. But we also hope you plan on coming back, because each and every time you do, not only with the hope that you're going to take away more thought-provoking information that you can pass on to your families and your neighbors at home, word of mouth, with the hope that they'll also be more inclined to give us a chance at the truth, so to speak, because God knows you're not going to get it from Washington. But also expect that each time you come back, the museum is only going to continue to expand and grow in its modernizing of its displays, and more importantly, the amount of information presented. If I might ask, how many of you even took advantage or even stepped into our library? That's great, that's wonderful. We'd love that everybody would. It's the it's the largest UFO library in the world. And even our research center, just adjoining the library. We could spend weeks there for the amount of material, and we're the researchers. And the main thing is, it's accessible. All of the other UFO groups and for all of their collection, their collective efforts as far as case files and sighting reports from all over the world, they're in boxes and basements, or they're in small little offices kept away as far as that you have to make an appointment. You want to even spend an hour wading through material. The doors are always open here, 7 days a week, and that too, please, if you have any interest in the subject, come back just to take advantage of this wonderful facility, and knowing that it's only going to continue getting better. Thank you.
Jesse, Marcel, you guys can, okay. Thank you for having me, I guess would be one way to put it, and I really enjoy myself down here. And from where I sit, it's actually really inspirational for me to be here because I learn more from you to basically think more about the story and think more about how my family related to that story, and maybe in a way that didn't occur to me before. So, in great brevity, but thank you very much for being here.
I'm Don Burleson. I'm the state director for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network for New Mexico. And I've been interested in UFOs since the age of 5 in one way or the other, because at that age I saw one. That was the same weekend as Roswell, by the way, but 300 miles, 300 miles east of here. But of course, by those airspeeds, that's it's quite even possible it might have been the same object. I'll probably never know. I've written several books related to the UFO topic, including UFOs and the Murder of Marilyn Monroe, UFO Secrecy and the Fall of J. Robert Oppenheimer, and more recently a little novella called The Roswell Genes. Professionally, I'm a mathematician. I just retired after finishing my 50th year of college mathematics teaching. I do like to point out every time I say that I was only 3 when I started. In case anybody's doing the math, okay? You don't retire from being a mathematician, I'm still that. I have a particular interest in genetics, and because I've worked as a consultant, as a mathematician on some genetics projects. To me, the UFO question has always been vital. I've only really been an investigator for about the last 25 years or so, which, at my age, doesn't have very much time. But it's my wife and I moved to Roswell from New Hampshire in 1996, mostly because of what happened here, namely the most significant event in human history. And I think for the moment I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Carey. I'm from a little town in Pennsylvania just outside of Philadelphia called Huntington Valley. And quite frankly, I was not looking forward to coming this year. But it's not anything to do with the festival or what we do here. It's the traveling. The flying is just a nightmare these days. And I think most of you have your own horror stories if you fly at all. But I'm so glad that I came this year. The crowds have been just wonderful. The questions have been good. And what I did is I came a day early on Wednesday evening because I love research. And when we're doing this, we just can't get away from our chores, duties, whatever, between the talks and the selling the books and that sort of thing. So I took Thursday off to go around town to take photographs of various sites involved in the 1947 event. And Don and I solved the conundrum that has been bothering us for a long time as to how did the rancher, Mac Brazel, wind up in the clutches of the military, and we solved that on this trip. And for me, it's almost euphoric when you get a hit, And so that alone, I'm so glad I came. But we love doing the talks and meeting.
That government.
Thank you so much for coming. It's a real pleasure.
We were sliding that timer back and forth. here so we can talk ourselves. Hi, everybody. My name is Frank Kimbler. I am assistant professor of earth science at the New Mexico Military Institute here in Roswell. I've been here since 2009. When it comes to Roswell, I am the physical evidence guy. I have basically used my scientific knowledge and whatever I can scrounge out of other people, including this distinguished group here, because I picked their brains relentlessly. That's how I was able to find some stuff out at the crash site. So I have found over time probably 20 or 30 metallic specimens and some plastics out there, that some of which have some anomalous things to them. And it's still under investigation. I don't have the answers that everybody wants for. Is it really extraterrestrial? Every time we get close, it's like 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards. Things disappear, they get stolen. It won't happen the second time. I've made lots of mistakes. I didn't realize exactly how many people were really interested in the artifacts until you start actually having some of them in your hand. And it seems like people want them, and I don't know who these people are, but they really do want them. Anyway, that's my claim to fame. I don't have any books that are out there of any kind. I have a little bit of information out on the internet. If you Google my name, it comes up. I've been on a number of documentaries, Smithsonian, Discovery, History Channel, and numerous other Japanese and Denmark, a whole bunch of other little documentaries about Roswell, especially about the work that I've done. Hopefully there'll be some good stuff coming up in the near future. Anyway, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be part of this. I support the museum, they support me. I help them all I can, and they know that. I'm their scientist guy. They always ask me questions. So glad you guys are here. Use the museum, it's a wonderful place. Thank you.
My name is Ron Regehr. I'm a retired astronautical engineer. I worked on deciphering and trying to figure out what's in the Ramey office photos. I was introduced to them by the gentleman who took 4 of them, and we started out on a quest to find out if General Ramey had lied. And it turns out he had not. That's been and continues to be part of my work. Another part, this part I've recently taken on, is learning to read and understand petroglyphs and pictographs, and I'm documenting the Hopi and Zuni legends from the last elders from Hopi Mesa 1. It's been a great trip. Thank you all for being here. I hope you come next year. I hope you keep an interest up. And I want to ask, how many people have seen a UFO? Those of you who reported it, keep your hands up. Now you see why we don't have too many UFO reports to go on. Please report them. MUFON has a web page. There are other web pages you can report them on. If they're reported to MUFON, they will be investigated. And please cooperate with the investigators. Thank you very much.
My name is James Clarkson. I have 30 years experience in law enforcement, fraud investigation, etc. I've also been researching UFOs for 30 years. The reason I'm on this panel is because of June Crane. June Crane was a woman I knew before she died in 1998. When she was a young woman, she worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and top secret laboratories. She had many things to say about what scientists and engineers say behind closed doors about aliens, UFOs, and Roswell. I just want to convey a sincere thank you to the museum, my colleagues, and most of all to you. Every time I leave a conference like this, I feel blessed because I take your stories back with me. I'm enriched, and I go on from here and try to do a better job. Thank you.
Let me just introduce myself before we get down to it. My name is Peter Robbins. I'm an investigative writer, lived most of my life in my hometown of New York City, and for some years I've resided just outside of beautiful Ithaca, New York, in the center of New York State farm country. We'll begin with anybody that wants to raise their hand and ask a question. Sir.
This is Dog Battle. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, somebody goes outside, they take a hubcap, throw it up in the air, they hang something, suspend something from a line. Pretty easy to figure out that it's fake. Today, somebody lies today, it's just as difficult to figure out if they're lying today as it was 50 years ago. But today, any 13-year-old kid in his grandma's basement can make a UFO video or picture that defies Hollywood. How hard does this make you gentlemen's job to be able to get to the bottom of, when you're investigating something, to be able to cut through the shaft to get to the wheat on some of this stuff today? It's just, it amazes me to go to YouTube and watch some of this stuff. I know it's fake, but I'm like, my God, this looks good. How hard is it?
Great question, and we'll give that first to Ron.
I never look at anything on YouTube and never look at anything on the internet. To me, it's a waste of time.
Right, but there's still stuff you've got to.
There may be, but it's not worth separating the fly specks from the pepper. And I think that's an investigator that sits and watches the TV is not an investigator. They're a TV watcher. And that's all I can say about
But
it.
doesn't that hurt your job? Doesn't that hurt
Not
you?
at all. Not
You
at
don't think
all.
so?
No. It doesn't hurt my job because I don't pay any attention to it. And if you came up to me and said, look at this YouTube video, I'd say I choose not to. It's not worth my time.
But I wouldn't do that. I'd bring my own video to you.
And I would say, thank you very much. What have you got? That's not evidence to me.
Okay.
James.
I try to use an investigative legal standard for photographs. In order to get a photograph or a video into court, the photographer has to be sworn in as a witness. Obviously, I'm not swearing people in, but the word for me is provenance. I want to know who exactly took the video or the photo. I would like to meet the person face to face. In other words, I would like to qualify them as a witness in order to decide whether or not their photographic evidence is admissible. Would it convince most people? Is it reasonable? Those are the standards that I use.
I'll say get into that. It's who, what, where, when, why kinds of things. And not only that, these days, even though the technology is really high, it's really not that difficult to figure out. Looking at the videos, looking at the animations, whether it's real or not real, it's not that difficult to do. Anybody that's really into the video, really into the animation can pick that stuff up in a heartbeat. Not hard.
Before 1947, how were alien spacecraft depicted? Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, rocket ships. How were aliens depicted? Human beings wearing, space outfits. 1947 changed. Hollywood doesn't come up with anything original. Never has. They copy reality. What's wonderful about Roswell is that the UFO territory back then was pristine. It was virgin territory. And that's why I don't worry about the present. Because as far as we're concerned, Roswell being the granddaddy of all UFO cases, everything else pales in comparison. And so, most people aren't aware of the fact that there were many hoaxes even back in 1947. Advertising companies, as far as all types of recovered saucers that were used as far as not to essentially trick anybody, but as an advertising, publicity stunt, that type of thing. But through the years, only 3 to 5% of all reported UFO sightings even turn out to be a hoax. So it's a very small minority. But I also do agree with Ron. Anything you see on the internet, buyer beware.
I would just add that in talks that I've given where we touch on the subject of photographic material, photo analysis, I go back to the time that I entered the field in the later 1970s. A mentor of mine was a professional, highly regarded photo analyst, and he pointed out to me in the old black and white days, even a layperson with a 10-power magnifying glass could spot if a saucer had been cut out and glued down. You could see the edge of the paper. It was a simpler time. Analysis was simpler. There are professional photo analysts and some who have lent time and credence to this field. The best known and most respected is Dr. Bruce McAbee, who is an optical physicist, now retired, who for more than 30 years was a go-to guy for the United States Navy on photo analysis. Bruce has conducted numerous rigorous analysis on UFO photos over the decades, and for me, if he or somebody at his level of that profession says this is authentic, I can't say what it is, but it's not, you know, a cutout, it's not glued down, it doesn't seem to be fake. That's at least a place to start. Next question.
Comment.
Sorry.
What you say is correct, absolutely correct. Fortunately, on the Roswell case, we're not looking at flying discs or things that we're talking about. It's something that crashed. We're not interested in lights in the sky or things like that. But having said that, we did get fooled on a case involving an alleged body of one of the Roswell occupants. And we did due diligence on that for 3 years. And let's say there were 10 steps of verification on it. We went through the first 9 and everything turned up positive. The film was from the slide was from 1947. The holder was from the same age. And, so we're saying, boy, everything is a go. The one thing we couldn't do was there was a little placard on the slide in the image at the foot of this cadaver, which to me looked like what people had described to us. We scoured the internet for a match. We couldn't find one. We sent the placard out to various interpretation units. They couldn't read it. I myself worked 3 years on it off and on. I could not read a word of this placard, which was key to telling us what the image was all about. So we have this big rollout, or reveal, I guess you'd call that. And we're all feeling pretty good, you know, with a large crowd. So I get home to Philadelphia or Huntington Valley, and the next thing I know, somebody has read it. How is this possible? When we sent it out to the best people, they couldn't read it. The U.S. Army Photo Interpretation Unit could not read it. We couldn't read it. Nobody could read it. Somebody somewhere was able to download some program that said it was the mummification of a 2-year-old boy, 900 years old. And we got criticized strongly for taking so long and doing due diligence, and here it turned out to be something else. You have 9 steps are saying yes, and the final step said no. Anywhere along the line, if one of those steps said no, we would have walked. But they all were positive. And I'm still a little stunned by it, to be honest with you. And this was 2 years ago. But it still goes on. It still goes on.
It makes your job difficult.
I'm more wary.
Sir.
Yeah, I'm just going to, well, I think it's appropriate that I just talk a little bit about the subject I'm interested in, which is the alien autopsy. I know it's seen by ufologists as something that's been talked about ad infinitum in the past, but it was hoax. Ray Santilli came forward in 10 years after it came out in 1995, and it was a recreation. I run a Facebook page on Facebook called Alien Autopsy Analysis, and I've been doing talks around England, Wales, and basically looking into the whole alien autopsy saga, and I'm not happy with what we've been told about that piece of footage. I actually think that at least part of that footage is actually genuine. I have not seen any recreation of that, anyone who's actually offered evidence to provide the props that have been shown in that piece of film. And I've contacted all the main investigators, and I know I was talking to Rick, we've both got a friend in England called Neil Morris, and he's examined the film footage, and it's still a very controversial piece of footage. So my question is really, should we still be talking and analysing this piece of footage? Because obviously we never got to date here, and that for many people was the major problem with that piece of footage. But does anyone still have a slightly opinion of the alien autopsy, and is it worth investigating, or not just accepting that it was a hoax as claimed?
We were initially contacted by, and I realize he's not a colleague of yours, Philip Mantle, in 1994. And he was already sending us stills from the film. And with the request that we would display them to our Roswell witnesses. Does the body, do the facial features, that type of thing, in any way resemble what, as a witness, who we were working with, would say that that's what we saw back in 1947. The reason we backed away at that time, and we were pretty much demanding of Mantle and some of his colleagues, was that they were already labeling it the Roswell alien autopsy. And as the witnesses would tell us that, no, this does not look like what we observed back in 1947, that columns, you might recall, they then moved it up a week before.
31st of May.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you start altering details of that nature, just to, once again, appeal to the general public, it was always a case of Godspeed, whatever you're able to determine, but please don't call it the Roswell alien autopsy, because our witnesses were saying no. And that's where we left it, after all this time.
But does that footage hold up for anyone at all? Has been any press? I mean, I don't think it's been debunked. That's my whole point. I haven't seen the evidence that it's been made, created.
And as far as even the magician,
Yeah, the footage was originally, as I've been found out, and primarily through the efforts of Neil Morris in Great Britain, the original photographer, whoever he or she was, offered this to sale to Mr. Santilli. Mr. Santilli didn't have enough money to buy the film from the original photographer, the person who had the film, claiming it was the 1947 Roswell alien. Santilli sold shares or sold the film before he had it. When he finally got it, he found out the film was damaged to the point where he couldn't just put the film in a projector and run it, because it was kept in steel cases, and those cases collected moisture and destroyed part of the film. As a result, he contacted a man called Spyros Malaris, who was, let's just say, a videographer, filmmaker, and I don't know all of his credentials other than the fact that he was a magician, and he was actually kicked out of the Magicians Union, which is maybe something else. And I say that for full disclosure. And what happened was he contacted Mr. Humphreys, I believe his name was, who created a replica based upon his observations as part of this original footage. He created a replica dummy. From that, Mr. Malaris recreated or reconstructed the video under contract from Mr. Santilli. That video, according to Mr. Malaris, contains 20 to 30% of the original footage in his video. What we did, when I say we, I was a team leader and Neil Morris did the work. Neil Morris was in charge of the laboratory. Did I say that right? Laboratory at Manchester University in Manchester, England. It's a physics astronomy lab, so he has access to a lot more equipment than I do. So he examined the final resulting film frame by frame by frame. Why he started examining it was he was watching when it first came out, and he was astounded to find out that part of the images of the some of the six-fingered handprint and things, he found 4 characters that were matches for 4 characters on the Roswell photos that we were working on taking in General Ramey's office. We got 4 characters, the same character. That said to him, there's a match here somewhere, I will look closer. He did a frame-by-frame analysis, and what he found out was, and you can do this yourself on the frame numbers, I'll provide you the data if you want to look at it. The frame numbers of the real, the real footage from 1947, that's what I call the real footage, and the reconstruction footage included by Millars with the Humphreys dummy. The Humphreys dummy has different skull cap angle. That's very plain to see. Different length of toes, different shaped ears, different blood stains going down the side of the skull, different blood splatters on the sheet. The set is different from the one that was provided to us by Mr. Millars. It showed he constructed 2 walls. This one very plainly has 3 walls. You can see through a doorway. So what we found out is the original footage has a different body in it than the reconstruction portion of it that was brand new using the Humphrey model. So we can conclude that the 1947 footage is either something that was hoaxed or faked back in 1947, which is possible, there's no way we can prove or disprove that, or a real alien who was autopsied. We have no evidence to support either conclusion, except that it was different from the one that the Humphreys modeled. So you can draw your own conclusions. It may be the real crashed alien autopsy in that small portion. It may not be. We do know it does date, though, from 1947.
Thank you, Ron.
Yes, I don't know all that stuff, but I viewed, we had a Japanese film crew here in 1996 doing a special on the alien, also called alien autopsy. And my background is in physical anthropology. And when I saw the body, I said, I don't know about the head. You know, it could have been some sort of deformity, but that was a human body, in my opinion. And especially the feet. In the human body, the most specialized part of your body is the foot, because it had to go from a quadruped during evolution until we have upright posture as a natural standing. So this body, and I'm looking at it, had human feet. And for me, that they were billing it as one of the Roswell aliens. I said, this is a hoax. It's some sort of human. I don't know if they switched a head or something in it, but the feet were human. And so I said, this is a hoax.
Next question.
Yes, hi, this question is for Mr. Marcel.
Yes.
And I can't remember exactly when it was, but Nick Pope had put out just a request, if for anybody who, can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I will remind anybody asking questions to do your best to keep your voice up so we can hear your question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Or what you say.
Okay. All right, I'm standing.
Why not?
Oh, okay. Nick Pope had put out, I'm not exactly sure when it was, but he had put out a request for people that, if they had things handed down to them from their grandparents, or say they were cleaning up their grandparents' attic or something, and they came across things that they thought might be related,
Yes.
to, maybe, let investigators take a look at it so they would have, more evidence or whatever. And my question for you is, do you think there's anything left kind of
Yes.
hiding around out there? Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you walk close to the front and on an aisle, I'd like you to walk up to take the mic. Otherwise, next question. Yes, sir.
This is a question for Mr. Stanton. It's a dual-part question. What made you want to break open Roswell and do the work that you did back in the 70s when all of this information was either hand-typed up or word of mouth? That's the first question. And the second question is when you interviewed this man's grandfather, how was his vernacular when he talked about the actual getting on site? How could you read him? Was he excited? Was there any other motives there that you could see that maybe gave you kind of uneasy feeling? Because I mean, you're really the reason why we're here. So I want to thank you first off.
Well, I guess I'll thank you for that. I'm not sure. My first interview with Jesse, remember, was on the phone. I got to him because I was recommended to him by Bill Allen, the station manager at a big television station in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was at the station, not to talk about Roswell, I was at the station to promote my lecture that night at Louisiana State University. Flying saucers are real. It contained absolutely nothing about Roswell. And the only reason he said anything to me that led me to Roswell was that the third reporter who was supposed to interview me, I'd done the first two, was nowhere to be found. So he didn't want me to leave. He knew that I had other things to do. The students from the University of Louisiana State had brought me to the station. They'd arranged the interview. And I did the first two interviews, and the third interviewer was nowhere there to be found. And Bill Allen, out of the blue, I mean, he's giving me coffee, he's talking to me, he's looking at his watch, I didn't know what to make of that. And out of the blue, he says, the guy you ought to talk to is Jesse Marcel. And since I'm such a brilliant investigator, I said, who's he? And his answer effectively changed my life. It was, he handled wreckage of one of those saucers you were interested in when he was in the military. It's a very simple sentence, you know. And I said, what? You know, what do you know about him? He lives in Homa. That didn't tell me anything. I didn't know where Homa was. So he says he's a great guy. We're old ham radio buddies. You ought to talk to him. And then the reporter showed up. I did the third interview. The students took me back to the campus and was busy from the rest of the time. The talk was very well received. They had done a good job on promotion. And the next day, I was at the airport. I don't know where I was going, another lecture. I was doing lots of them. And I decided maybe I should try to reach this Jesse Marcel, Homa. I didn't know where it was, but I found out. And no, I didn't go to my computer because the stuff wasn't on the computer. I grew up in an era when you wanted to find somebody, you called information. You know, and what I found incidentally was that the information operators knew a lot about the places that they lived in the area code. You could say, is that a nice private part of town? You might get some useful information. So I got a number for Jesse A. Marcel. I called him and told him that I'd been talking to Bill Allen at the television station. Oh yeah, they were old ham radio buddies. It was really true. And I wanted to know the rest of the story. And I explained to him I had a background, I'd been working on nuclear things and in industry and so forth. I wasn't somebody just walking down the street who had his name. So he told me his story, and it intrigued the heck out of me, partly because of the nuclear angle. He was the intelligence officer, the most elite military group in the entire world, the 509th. Nobody else had nuclear weapons in 1947. A lot of them do now, but at that time, that was unique. That means you didn't put idiots in high positions in the 509th. That made sense to me. This is an elite group of people. And he was the intelligence officer, which meant he had to have had approval from his superiors. He was only a major. So we got a few colonels, Colonel Blanchard and so forth. And so I wanted to pursue the story. And I didn't have the exact date when it happened, when this thing happened. But we started looking in newspapers. I got lucky. I mean, sometimes you get good luck, sometimes you don't. But I got lucky because I first looked to see if Roswell had a newspaper. I know, what do I know about Roswell? I grew up in Linden, New Jersey, as far as you can get from there, you know. And I looked up an editor and publisher, which lists all the newspapers in the country. Oh yeah, I got 2 newspapers, as a matter of fact. I only talked to the first one, Roswell Daily Record. And it was very straightforward. I called them and said, I'd like to talk to the editor from 1947. Oh, long gone. What do you need? I've got these articles that say that a man named Walter Haut, his name is spelled 4 different ways in the articles we found, put out a press release about a crashed flying saucer. And before I could finish the sentence, she says, oh, his wife works here. Which was a total shock. I didn't expect that. And I should add, Walter grew up in Chicago. But when he served here in 47, they liked it so much they set up house here, if you would. So I talked to Walter, he knew Jesse, and I couldn't help but decide that this was something worth following up on. Over the next year, spent a ton of money on phone calls. Well, because how do you find people? We're talking 30 years later, you know, without the internet. And so I was very much impressed by what I heard, and also the fact that I had a clearance myself. I was working on nuclear stuff, and I know that they're not careless about who they give access to highly classified nuclear information. And being at the only base in the world that had nuclear weapons meant these guys had pretty special clearances. So I couldn't turn away from this. In the first year, we found 60 people.
You said 60, right? 60?
60 people. It was a lot of work, but it was fun. It was a challenge. I like finding people. And, you know, one of the things I found, and this surprised me, I'm a physicist, not a psychologist, but I found you'd ask somebody, remember anybody else who was there at the time? These guys were in the yearbook, so I knew they'd been there. And at first you'd get, oh, it's been so long, I don't remember anybody. They didn't have a yearbook sitting in front of them. And then if you talk to them for another 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm sure you found the same thing, other investigators here. Hey, did you talk to Jonathan Schmitt? He was there, I remember him now. And after another few minutes, you get another few names, and pretty soon you've got 4 or 5 names, and people kept Christmas lists back then. Well, the wives kept the Christmas list, okay. And so a lot of them had kept track of their buddies from 47 through the Christmas list. And so it was a chase, but an exciting chase. And again, my basis was that I had to respect Jesse Marcel for what his job was. You don't get to be that. And he didn't go to West Point, so he didn't have the advantage that many of the other officers did. And when I started checking, I found Blanchard, base commander. You'll hear the negativists say, oh, just a loose cannon. Hardly. Went on to be a 4-star general, and there ain't many 4-star generals in the Air Force. And he, while he was working his way up, Strategic Air Command, he had thousands of nuclear weapons under his control. So you can call him a loose cannon, you can call him anything you want, but he didn't get there by being a nut or unreliable or whatever. That was extraordinarily important, what his job was. And so that's what kept me going. These weren't random people that just came up to me, hey, I got a story for you. Not like that at all. And so once you get through that first stage of finding there really is a story here. See, I didn't know when I talked to Jesse that this picture was in newspapers around the world. I didn't know that. But once I found that and other names and, you know, things just moved on. But it was all in the right direction. Walter Haut. Oh, he was PIO, all right. There was also a World War II bombardier. 20 missions over Japan.
Very successful, very nice.
And he also was chosen to drop the instrument package over one of the nuclear tests in 1946. You choose your best guy to do that. So yeah, it was PIO, and yes, he ran an art gallery here, and yes, he sold insurance here, and was highly trusted. And I'm sure all the guys here, investigators, make discreet inquiries of other people. Hey, you know that guy who does this or that? And you look for what kind of response you get. I wouldn't trust him with anything, somebody might say, you know. But I got good responses. So how could you turn that down? Here I'm lecturing, I'd already been lecturing since 1967. This is 10 years later. So I had plenty of chance to talk to audiences and hear a lot of stories, many of which I didn't believe. But this was a special one. It really was.
So how was he when you actually met and you actually talked?
It was years later when we met in person.
So you had a really good understanding, relationship. So was the Q clearance kind of membership, that bond, allow him to open up in a different way that you feel you got?
I don't think so. Look, I don't think he was going to reveal any classified material to me. You need to know. It isn't enough to have a clearance. It doesn't get you to access to everything at that level of security. You have to have a need to know. And that's crucial. But he knew I had a clearance for 14 years and working on nuclear things, big programs and all that sort of stuff. And I knew he was in a very special role with the weapons business. So I could get around all the nonsense about who is this guy? Is he some kind of a nut? You know, what's his life responsibilities hold and all the rest of that. But I wasn't expecting him to tell me highly classified matters. Anybody who has a clearance, I think, is absolutely foolish if he expects that other people are going to talk to him just because he had a clearance. That need to know is crucial. I didn't have a need to know for anything about nuclear weapons. I knew the basic physics, but that's the easy part. So it was an interesting experience, unlike anything I'd had. And I am so pleased that it's moved forward. Roswell's become a household word. Not like Hades or anything like that.
Yes, question?
I have one question for one of the witnesses and then another question. The nurse that was in the military hospital, who can tell
Naomi
about?
Self.
Pardon me?
Naomi Self.
Okay, I guess that's her. The one that drew the picture of the alien? Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about that? And then the other question was for Frank. I'd like to know what your grandfather says that the ETs telepathically told him when he went to he and the firemen were at the site. So that's what your question is. Thank you.
Who would like to take the question about Naomi?
Nobody else.
Yes, Glenn Dennis, the mortician from Roswell. I think he went public around 1987, 88, somewhere in there. And his main story was that he knew a nurse at the base hospital named, the name he gave us was Naomi Self. And she was allegedly in on the, I hate to use the term alien autopsy, but she was there in the hospital when they brought the alien bodies in. And she was coming through from another room, and the doctor said, get over here, we need you to take notes on what we're doing here. So she, I guess, participated in this autopsy. And she told Glenn Dennis about it, to cut to the chase here, that she had witnessed this procedure, and these bodies were not human. And Glenn had her draw a picture of it, the classic large head with the slanted eyes and things like that. So Glenn wanted to find out more. They met over the officers club, and then he wanted to meet some more. And all of a sudden, she's gone. Oh, well, where did she go? Well, she was shipped out. She was shipped to England, and she was killed over there in an airplane crash. So this was a juicy story for the young investigators like us at the time. And so we spent, I'd say, about 2 years researching this particular lead. And we finally went to Glenn and said, Glenn, we can't find any record of this Naomi Maria Self. Well, I gave you the wrong name. That wasn't her name at all. I'm not going to tell you her real name, but I just used a phony name because I promised her I wouldn't ever get her in trouble. Well, thanks a lot. We spent 2 years of time and money and what have you, and just because you didn't want to get her in trouble, we wasted all of that. So our conclusion was there never was a Naomi Self. The nurse was, he was using another nurse who's in the yearbook as his model for Naomi Self, and he knew that she had already passed away. She passed away young in mid-50s, and he used her because he knew that we couldn't interview her. We did more research on this, and we did identify the nurse, or at least the two possibles, as the real nurse. We believe Glenn's story about getting the phone calls for small caskets because we have other witness corroboration for those. We don't believe his story about his nurse friend. We do not. We believe he got that from someone else who also worked at Ballard's funeral home and whose wife was a nurse who was called to the hospital. So he got that part of the story from someone else, and he adopted it as his own.
When the firemen went to the crash site, they thought they were going to the crash of a small plane. And when they got there, there wasn't anybody they could talk to, so they're talking among themselves. How can we help this little person? Because he was walking around outside of the craft. And the little person replied to them, "You can't help me. There's nothing you can do, but don't be afraid, because we're not here to hurt you. We've been watching you for years." And at that point, the military got there, and they were escorted off of the place without being able to take the time to repair the fences they cut to get there. So that was very upsetting to Daddy because this was open range land.
Jesse, do you want to follow up on that in any way?
Okay. In the back?
Yeah, my question's kind of two-part. What is your idea of the concept of disclosure and what everyone here is close to the end of a long journey? Are we there yet?
I don't think we're there yet. I think there's some very serious national security concerns on two levels. What does it mean domestically? How are people going to react to this whole business about panic and so forth? We didn't panic when we heard about the atomic bomb, which was certainly a threat to all of humanity, not just to the Japanese. There are implications. One that affects national security. Some people say we're entitled to know everything. I don't think so. If we have learned technical data, and I certainly hope we have, from the wreckage, analysis of the wreckage, not only from this case, but other cases, should we publish it if the Russians and Chinese aren't publishing what they have learned? The big overriding influence here is how can we help control the world, or at least control our own safety, by utilizing new technology. And if we put stuff out and our potential enemies don't, they know what we know, but we don't know what they know. And that could mean a terrible wartime problem. People have often talked about a preemptive attack. When you've got so much going for you, let's knock them out while we can, kind of thing. We live in a crazy world. I remember a program on the radio about supposedly Stalin was planning on invading the United States. He had trusted Hitler. That was a bad mistake. And this guy on the radio, the Russian general, said that Stalin was assassinated because the other generals, Russia lost 20 million people during the war. You want another war? What are you, crazy? You know, maybe Stalin wanted one, but so what do you do about these implications? I've heard religious people tell me that there couldn't be any because they don't have flying saucers, aliens. It's not in the Bible. I would recommend that you read the book Flying Saucers in the Bible by Dr. Carey. Old and New Testament, there's plenty of them. You know. So there are some very serious implications of all of this stuff. And I'm not ready for disclosure in the sense that I don't think somebody's worked out what do we do next kind of thing. What's going to happen? Will there be riots? Will there certain religious leaders say, I don't believe that because it doesn't fit with our theology? Big questions, and I don't have answers for them. So I don't expect disclosure is happening around the corner because I don't think we're ready to deal with it on a worldwide basis, and it is a worldwide problem. It's not just our problem.
Here's my take on the disclosure thing. If we have physical evidence, and I'm working on that really hard, especially for the Roswell event, if we get 3 certified, verifiable lab results, and all 3 of them indicate that the material is of extraterrestrial origin, you will have your disclosure. I have no idea what it will do to the world, but I know this. It'll be pretty spectacular.
And that's why it still depends on us. Depends on what we are able to accomplish. And to essentially prove our best case. In 1960, the Brookings Institute was contracted by NASA to do a study on what the ramifications would be on mankind should we ever have contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. And their final report was then provided to Congress. But they demonstrated that in each case throughout history, wherever there was a higher intellectual meeting between us and them, so to speak, that whether by conquest, whether by influence, whether just by presence, the lower intelligence has always ceased to exist. So their strong recommendation was that this should never be disclosed. If it should ever happen, it should be kept a secret at all costs. Most of us have seen the episode of The Twilight Zone to serve mankind. How would we ever trust a higher intelligence? We couldn't.
I would say, given the track record of government for being straightforward and truthful and honest and candid, forget it. Essentially, at this point, it's really kind of too late, for them to come out and say, okay, we're going to tell you everything. Basically, what that would amount to is, pardon us, but, we've been lying to you about everything for many decades, but trust us.
I just say one thing I've said before. I think that the government will come out with it when they need to come out with it. When there's a reason that benefits them in some way, they will come out. And it's just a matter of time. When that time frame is, who knows? But I think there will be a time in which it will benefit them to bring it out. So
I would only add that sometimes the best models that we have for thinking about these almost impossible to wrap our heads around situations comes to us from great science fiction, at least for me. And some decades ago, there was a miniseries that was remade with more money, and it was even worse. And it was a terrible miniseries, I thought, called V. However, the opening of this story was worthy of H.G. Wells or Jules Verne. One morning, everybody in the world gets up, and as I recall, over the 60 biggest cities, there are 60 giant motherships, a mile across, a mile up, game over. They may be the ones to reveal themselves at a certain point, no matter what we feel. Get to you in a moment. Mark.
After Roswell, July 1947, the Truman administration did the National Security Act in August of 1947, which sprung off the CIA and the Defense Department and the Air Force. We just find out that now the Trump administration is spinning off a new corps called the Space Corps off of the Air Force. And so Space Command and everything's going to be a new corps, kind of like the Marine Corps is to the Navy. There's going to be a Space Corps that's out in space for the Air Force. Have you heard any ramifications on this that is coming out of the Trump administration? Any speculation? I mean,
I've heard nothing from the administration. However, I worked for over 30 years in the field, which included spy satellites. There has been a space comm since I believe around 1976. Usually when a command grows to a certain point where the military is highly structured in that if you command several people, you're a corporal, more than that, a sergeant, all the way up to generals and more stars and more people. So when Spacecom has grown to the point, and I believe it has, where there are so many people, they need a higher ranking officer. They will create this, and I think that's the point we've reached. We've reached that tipping point. And I don't believe it has as much to do with UFOs and aliens as it has to do with protecting our own satellite fleet. GPS goes out, the Navy still has 2 Mark I eyeball sets that shoot the sun every day with the sextant. There's still, every organization has communications that have nothing to do with satellite comm. So I think the whole purpose is to enable us to maintain what they believe to be our superiority in space. And yes, I think it's because we just grown that much where they need it.
Is this something that's happened in the last few days, or?
Yeah.
yes.
I confess ignorance. I haven't read a newspaper in a week or seen much TV because of.
It's
getting ready
even
for
baffled some of the people in Congress that it's being pushed through. So yeah, it's relatively new and it seems
I've been out of touch for the last week.
Something in Black Ops once again rises to the surface.
Yeah.
In 1995, Rod's absolutely correct, I was one of the first civilians given a tour of Space Command at Holloman Air Force Base. And we went 3 levels down. And it was a giant hangar of nothing but snow white tractor trailers, each one with a small reactor in the back. And as it was explained to me, the sole purpose was for satellite communications in the event of a nuclear attack. So in other words, they would come to the surface and then spread out and maintain communications. If there should be an CP as far as outage. So that was in 1995. So again, these things eventually come out, either as a military deterrent, like look what we have, don't try anything, or eventually they're replaced by even greater technologies that we won't hear about for another 20 years. Yes?
I would like to ask all of you researchers, outside of Roswell's UFO crash, in New Mexico, have any of you researched another crash that was as messy as Roswell in New Mexico, where there was either alien material, mutilated parts, crash parts, anything that would be close to what happened in Roswell, but just yet to really be in the forefront?
I would recommend a book by Scott and Suzanne Ramsey about the Aztec incident. For years, we thought it was baloney because a guy named Frank Scully talked about it in ways that weren't too sharp, and because a newspaper reporter got angry that he wasn't given a chance at the story and flailed about attacking the whole business. But the book is out now. I wrote a foreword for it. I'm convinced that they got information. Suzanne lives up near Asta, or used to. And so they had plenty of people they knew that they could talk to. People in small towns in New Mexico or in New Brunswick don't talk to outsiders very readily. But they were able to gain access. So I look at that one as an example. It was a big one. And one of the big questions was, well, okay, how could you move that darn thing? And Scott hired a guy whose job it was to figure out how to move large power plant equipment, generators, big stuff. You know, if the tunnel is only 8 feet wide, you don't put a 10-foot generator through it. So he hired him, starting at the Aztec location. They got all the way to Los Alamos, and indeed, he was able to do it. He said, yes, it could be done, and look at it if you were in that situation. So that's one in New Mexico. And for anybody here from out of state who has no idea why any alien worth his salt would want to come to New Mexico, it's hotter than hell, and so forth and so on. Let me remind you that the first nuclear explosion took place in New Mexico, and that there was a lie about it. It was seen from 100 miles away. Everybody was calling the sheriff, and they had to say something. An ammunition dump had blown up, and fortunately nobody was injured. After a few weeks, when we had Hiroshima and Nagasaki, by the way, that was the first one back then. Secondly, this is where White Sands, Missouri Range is. The only big missile firing place in the United States. And for the same reason as the first atomic bomb, ain't many people around, folks. We can do this stuff without worrying about destroying lots of things if something goes wrong. So, New Mexico would be a natural place if you were checking out this planet. The radiation levels, certainly Trinity's site, and I've been there, left quite a residue of radiation. And if you want to look at that big steel cylinder that was originally going to be used to hold the first atomic bomb, because if it doesn't work, we'll lose all that plutonium, and we spent a fortune getting that. That thing was moved from Ohio to Munster's thing, down to Trinity site. And secrecy. Nobody knew what it was. They certainly weren't told, oh yeah, that's where we're going to put the atom bomb, you know, to save the plutonium. So we have a history of some things that we can say about. I mean, who knows the mind of an alien? You guys, I don't think so. You know, why they would do anything. I don't know if that answered the lady's question.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, Aztec. I mean, I just didn't know if the one over in Socorro, if that was pretty relative to the one near Roswell. I think it's a little.
Socorro, strictly speaking, was not a crash.
Okay.
It was a landing. And, you know, there wasn't wreckage and more bodies left behind or anything like that. It was a very significant event, but really a whole different kind of one. You know. Basically, I've done some work on that, you know, and it's fascinating, you know, but again, it's a different kind of thing.
As a Roswell researcher, I've heard about other alleged crashes, but for me, I can't speak for anybody else, that the research of Roswell has been so labor intensive, with so many witnesses to try to find and interview, and other things. I personally have not had the time to investigate any other crash other than Roswell for the last 26 years. So I can't, like I said, I can't speak for anybody else, but my time is strictly Roswell related.
Since I live here and I do physical evidence stuff, and I got a name for it, for Roswell, for tinkering with that and doing some good research on it. And as much as I dislike saying this, I actually made a couple of people really mad at me. because of, I went and took a good close look at, and was invited on an expedition that went over to Horse Springs, supposed crash site for the plains of St. Augustine. That was the same place that Art Campbell and Chuck Wade did their research on that. There's a book out in reference to that.
On Horse Springs?
Yeah, it's Horse Springs. It's over out. It's the towards the VLA, the Very Large Array, between the. It's out towards Dallas here in New Mexico, and that's that way. And that you can go out and sort of Google the plains of St. Augustine and kind of look at the information that's out there. I was out there. I looked at the site. It has been featured on UFO hunters. Even then, if you look closely, that particular site is the town dump for Horse Springs. It's been there for almost 100 years. It's incredible the amount of trash that's laying around out there. How anybody could have ever discovered anything that even remotely resembled a spacecraft. I don't know how they did it, because there's pieces of tractors, there's aluminum bed pans, there's pieces of tractor trailer, there's aluminum housings and trailers laying around all over the place. I've looked at this stuff. It is a mess. If something did crash out there, I've seen the isotope work that was done on the stuff that came back. It was not good, because I have that original data. There was nothing that actually proved it was an extraterrestrial. They were claiming they found a heart. It ended up being melted polyurethane from one of the tractor trailers that was out there. And they actually featured that on UFO Hunters. It went to SEAL Labs, they did the work. They said, oh, it's polystyrene, is what it is, which is basically styrofoam, dense stuff that's used for insulation. And as much as I hate to say this, I was actually invited over to look at another one, which that researcher's really mad at me because she says I stabbed her in the back. That's because I tell it like it is. That one is also a bunch of malarkey, and that was the Jose Padilla Rainy Baca site that is San Antonio. I've been out there. That's a shooting range for the locals. They love to go out there and shoot targets. One of the targets they shot at was basically it was a clutch plate. It's made out of cast aluminum. It ended up shattering and sending pieces all over the place. There's trash. It's right off the side of the road. The original artifact, I actually did some tests on the original artifact that came from there, which was a thing that the young kid, Jose Padilla, basically said, said he pulled it off the inside of the spacecraft. It looked like some kind of a dial. And I matched it up to a piece of windmill. And then I did one step further. I didn't do any testing on it other than the fact that I measured its density, and I measured it exact. I did it like 30 times. The density came out perfect with the scales I have at school. And I measured the scales, or the way it measured the density. It came out, it was a dead-on match for something we call an A3 alloy, which is normally used for casting, has been used for castings, making parts for windmills for a very long time. So I told them I thought it was a windmill part. I showed them the windmill part. They said, oh, you're lying, you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, I'm not dealing with this anymore, because guess what? It's trash by the side of the road, and the piece they found is a piece off of a windmill. They made the story up. Sorry, it's case closed. So that's I worked on those. That's my story behind that. So I do a lot of the physical evidence stuff. I haven't tacked Aztec yet. That is a cool story. That's not a crash. That was something that landed there. I guess and Stanton can correct me on this, or any of the rest of the researchers. That thing was relatively intact, and I don't think there was any pieces of that one. They got the whole craft. That's my understanding of that one.
It seems to me that Roswell was the messiest for sanitizing by the military for cleanup of the site, right? It was a loose, out of control for them. But it seems like subsequent any sightings, crashes, landings, there's just no evidence. Is that right?
Well, I would say that, as he just said, the Aztec is a different matter entirely. I wasn't talking about Padilla, and I have my concerns from the past about that. But there is a problem here in trying to pin things down from long ago, and with people maybe thinking they can make something big out of something small. The findings on Aztec were not like that. It turned out the other way around. so we don't have a department of UFO crashes investigative system. There's no easy way to get a lot of people involved in checking on things, especially that happened a long time ago.
Well, you mean a lot of people that are regular, not military, seems like they're the first ones that are able to contain it and sanitize it.
I'm not going to fight with the military.
Yeah.
That's their privilege to do what they darn please, pretty much. So we have unanswered questions. There probably have been other crashes, and you're right, certain things have been covered up very effectively. That's the way the world is. Sometimes you get the right combination of people to cover things up. It's not all planned.
I'd like to go on. I think we only have time for about one or two more questions.
Thank
Yes, gentleman in the back.
Yes, that last question prompted me to ask, well, first to start with, 70 years ago we had the Roswell crash. 120 years ago we had the alleged crash in Aurora, Texas, just outside of Fort Worth, Texas, where similarly we had a bunch of crash debris either thrown down a well or hauled off by local law enforcement for examination. I pose to you, do you have any thoughts on the possibility that the crash debris from Roswell was taken to Fort Worth due to possible previous experience with this sort of thing?
Anybody want to take that?
Well, Fort Worth was the natural place to take things. It was the headquarters of the 8th Air Force, Carswell Air Force Base. The 509th was part of the 8th Air Force. So there's a strict chain of command there. It's not an accident that that's the place you'd go. General Ramey was based there. He was head of the 8th Air Force. They were part of the 8th Air Force. So you put it into his hands. And I talked to Thomas Jefferson DuBose, who told me he took the call from Ramey's boss, giving him strict instructions. You know, get the press off our back. I don't care how you do it. Send some of the wreckage up here today with one of your colonel couriers, and I don't want you ever to talk about it again. That's an order. Do I need to put it in writing? No, sir. When a two-star tells a colonel what to do, he does it. Both from West Point. There's no question about what you would do. I'm sure that General McMullen had no worries that Tommy DuBose was going to spill his guts to some newspaper report. No way.
Real quick, I have access to it in my hot little hands and on my computer, analytical data from the Aurora, the stuff that was analyzed on that. Interesting thing about that, there was nothing definitive was ever determined on that, other than the fact that they determined it was aluminum alloy. And there was nothing that ever proved or disproved that it was of extraterrestrial origin. I think it leaned more towards common materials. Don't know exactly. I'd have to pull the data out and look at it. I wasn't impressed with it. I'm never impressed with some of the research that's done on some of the physical evidence. It's just never done the right way. The one interesting thing is I wish Aurora would let people go dig up the grave where the alien is supposed to be buried, which would really be cool, but they keep that a secret, and it would mess up their story if it turned out to be nothing. So it would ruin their tourist industry. So that was, they keep it a secret, they won't let anybody know where it is, but it's a cool story. There's lots of really cool crash site stories out there. I love them all. I've researched every single one of them, so they're kind of neat.
I think we have time for one more question.
I have a question for the lady that said the little alien wandered around and told the firemen they couldn't help him. How did the alien say that to the firemen? In English or telepathically or what?
There were no verbal words spoken except the firemen to each other. And when the little person made the answer to them that, he wasn't here to hurt him or anything, they all heard the same thing, and yet they didn't hear it. So they said, what was it? And they said they talked to us in our head.
So telepathy.
But they didn't know mental telepathy, so they couldn't identify what it was.
Could you say what your connection is to that story? I know you're one of the children, right?
Correct.
Or do you
My dad was Stanton. He was the fireman that went out there with the truck and four of the crew. And because I did play with one small piece of it later, I was threatened. And I didn't talk for a long time either.
I think that's as good a note as we have to end on. Thank you all so much for being here.